I'll just fill in. I'll be like, ugh. And we're live on the podcast, or in the studio on the podcast. Team Early and Fun. Because we've got Alicia. How do you say your last name? I was going to ask you and I forgot. Rosvi. Alicia Rosvi, Woolly Time Micro Farm, and Sarah Lakewood, Farm Shed, Food Fair, MC, in the house, co-hosting. I'm excited for this. Sarah,
soup shot, anyone?
Soup shot. Get your soup shot. That was a fun morning. It was a fun day.
Fun morning.
Sarah.
Yes.
Who are you? What do you love to do? Let's start there.
Okay, I'm Sarah Lakewood. I've lived in Stevens Point proper since 2012. Been in the area since 1977, so that shows you my age. Anyway, some of the things that I enjoy doing, my wife is actually from the UP. So we spend a lot of time in the UP up near Lake Superior. We love to get lost in the Keweenaw Peninsula whenever we get a chance. We also have friends who have a cabin up in Iron River, Wisconsin, halfway between Ashland and Superior. So we spend a lot of time up at their cabin with them in the summertime as well. But we love the UP any time, any season, whether it's spring, fall, winter, summer. I love to be up. Just 2 years ago, we were up there and we were hiking at Little Presque Isle just outside of Marquette. And there's an island just outside off the beach there, and these guys come at us on these fat tire bikes. There's like probably 6 or 8 of them, and they're like, "Dude, it was so cool. Have you been over there yet?" Because it was ice all the way across, so you could get across.
Oh snap!
And I'm in my little hiking boots with my hiking poles, and I'm like, I'm not going over there. But we did. We hiked over there, but it was so slippery with ice we couldn't crawl up. But those guys on bikes could get right up. So it was just fun. But it was a beautiful sunny day like today where it was clear and super cold, but it was really, really fun. So,
I love it.
Yeah. So those are some of the things I enjoy.
Lover of outdoor recreation.
Lover of outdoor recreation and local food.
I was going to say, we can't forget local food. What does that look like for you? What was your childhood growing up, or maybe your 8 Mile moment where you're like, this is
8 Mile moment. Ooh, that's I had a garden growing up as a kid, but it wasn't until I married a farm girl from Michigan.
Shout out Sandy.
Yeah. Who and when we moved here in 2012, I had a friend of mine at work at the time where I worked who told me about this great place up in Athens, Wisconsin, and who did pizza on the farm on Friday nights. And so they said, well, everything that goes on the pizza comes from the farm, and we were intrigued. So we packed a bottle of wine one random Friday in 2012 in the summertime and drove up there. And absolutely fell in love with the farm, the pizza, the atmosphere, sitting in their barnyard at a picnic table. Shared a bottle of wine and a pizza, and I thought, this is heaven. And so that was Stony Acres, and we returned several Fridays that summer, and we brought my parents, we brought Sandy's mom, who was visiting from Michigan, and anyone else we could convince to share a pizza with us. So we went about every week because we were like, what's in season for the vegetable, and what were they going to throw on the pizza? And as we ate through the season that summer and into the fall, we decided that our favorite pizza that they made was one with a squash sauce that had their maple cured ham and thin sliced apples with blue cheese crumbles. Oh my gosh.
Why did I not eat breakfast?
Oh, that was the bomb.
Yeah.
So then from there in February 2013, we attended a local food fair right here in Stevens Point when it was at Spash, and we became Farm Shed members. And Stony Acres Farm had a booth there, so we chatted with them for a little bit, got excited about the 2013 season, and so then again we were there like every Friday night. And we also that was also the year that they started organizing the Growing Collective at Farm Shed. And we attended that meeting, but because of our work schedules, it didn't work out to join the group. But we were really looking for ways that we could eat more locally and seasonally, and also to meet people here in town. So it was just kind of like the best of both worlds. And we'd always been conscientious about where our food came from. We loved the farmers market, and we would go there whenever we were in town on the weekend, and it just sort of blossomed from there. I mean, we saw familiar faces at Stony Acres on the weekend, which is exactly an hour from our doorstep to the farm. So it really, truly is the perfect date night. Anybody in Stevens Point who wants to go up there to check it out, because now they do it Friday and Saturday night. But through them, we got to meet so many other, we call them our farm friends now. I mean, it's just because we met Joel Keenhold, we met Taylor Christensen, and then the first year that they had a CSA out at Lonely Oak Farm, my wife Sandy and I, we were their first members to sign up.
Oh,
so
wow.
When we signed up online, on the other end was Joel and Taylor in tears because they were like, oh my God, we're going to have a CSA. It's really going to happen.
I like it.
And that same summer is actually when we met Alicia, because Alicia was working out there as a worker share. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
You worked out at Joel's?
That is where I got my start.
Well, yeah, that's a good Sarah,
Yes.
you're hired.
Okay.
You're hired. That was a great transition.
Was that a good segue?
That was the best segue. And now we've got Alicia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear you had to work for Joel.
Oh.
Must have been
gosh,
terrible.
That was such a delight.
You can pull that mic even a little closer. Yeah, we have the Lonely Oak CSA at the gym in the clinic I work at. So
That's perfect. And he is up to 80 shares this year and can expand up to 100. So he's on fire out at Lonely Oak. It's awesome. But yeah, I met Sarah and Sandy in 2014, 13.
Yeah, something like that.
And at his barn dance, I was juggling my first CSA year as well as working at Joel's farm. And I had just taken that dive into growing food, not just for myself, but for other people. And so kind of as an introduction to myself, I'll back up a little bit. I'm a trained teacher. I'm a mother of 3, and I am a caregiver for a cancer survivor. So in 2011, my husband was not feeling very good, and I had just had a baby, so we just thought that we were tired. And you have 3 little children under 6 years old, you just... You feel like crap,
Fatigue is life.
Yes. But it got worse and worse, and eventually he lost his appetite, he started bruising, he wasn't doing anything but sleeping, and we thought we should probably check it out. His white blood cell count was off the charts terrible. A normal person has about 8,000, and his were 98,000. He was immediately hospitalized and diagnosed with AML, which is acute myeloid leukemia, and was put on a watch for bone marrow transplant. So our life was skating along. He's a computer programmer at the time at AIG, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and we decided to spend 6 months in the hospital. And the first 6 weeks were in Marshfield, and he had tremendous amounts of chemotherapy and lost all of his hair and lost 80 pounds and ultimately left the hospital with cancer-free. So we were really lucky. Shabar was only full of leukemia for a very short period of time, and once he got that initial blood wipe and all of the blood numbers came back clean, he has been cancer-free since February of 2012. But the kind of cancer he had was environmental. It was explained to us like something went wrong with his body acting with or against his environment. And there have been some studies that link blood cancers like leukemia and lymphoma to glyphosate and other pesticides and herbicides. And so as we were preparing and moving to Chicago and getting ready for the stem cell transplant or the bone marrow transplant, we were also starting to think about like, no, what do we do from here? Because if we're lucky, he's going to survive this, and then we have to change things about our lives. And so from February 15th until July 23rd, we lived in Chicago with Shabar's mom and dad, which was really lucky. They were 25 minutes from the hospital. I was nomadic because when you have no immune system, you can't be around children because children are little germ balls, and they're beautiful little germ balls, but that's what they are. And so he had to be without the kids for that stretch of time. I was still nursing. Imran, my baby, was about 3 months until about 10 months from the beginning to the end for this whole thing. And so we kind of shuffled our lives around, and people would take care of my kids, take care of my house during the day, and I would spend the days at the hospital with Shabar, and then I would come home and spend the evenings with my kids. And we just kind of followed that pattern for several months. On July, I think 23rd, we came home, and that was like the best thing in the world.
I can imagine.
To just pull into that driveway and understand that you have this like second lease on life, and you get to just start over. And we were so blessed, but we were so wrecked. So, I have struggled since then. Shabar, I should say, is healthy today. He's rounding out his 8th year, cancer-free. He is awesome. You would never know to look at him that he had this struggle 8 years ago. I struggle since that day with what I can only assume is something like a traumatic stress event. Anytime somebody is sick, I immediately go to the worst case scenario. I struggle at this time of year because this time of year, this is February until May, was our hardest moments because Shabar was getting chemotherapy on the regular. He got radiation. I was nursing and juggling and living in Chicago with my in-laws, and they are beautiful people, but that's just not what you expected in your life when you're 36 years old or 35. And so we decided that we had to do something about it. And I needed to heal myself, and I needed to heal my family, and growing food felt like a way that I could control something. And it's become a little bit cliche because I've told the story a few times now, but I have this moment in my life where I was laying in bed, kind of struck with an anxiety attack in the middle of the night, woke up shaking and sweating and doing the things that anxiety does to you. And I was just asking the universe for some guidance, I guess, or some help. And in my head, in my mind's eye, I saw myself holding a seed, and the seed growing into food. And I realized, like, I cannot control life, but I can control the life of a seed, and I can control the planting of that life, and I can take that life and put it in the ground, and I can nurture it, and I can make food, and I can grab life by the roots and yank it out when I need to. And that control was what I craved. And so I started learning as much as I could about food and growing food. It started with my foray into the Master Gardeners. After being certified and spending a year there, I realized that it really was more for flowers than food in my findings. So it wasn't really where I was going. And but I also found the Farmers Union, and walked into my first meeting kid on my hip, 2 little ones trailing behind me. I was homeschooling at the same time, and so just kind of crazy in appearance and demeanor, and they were just welcoming. And the very first opportunity that I had where families were welcome, and I didn't even know what Farmers Union did or what it stood for, but I signed up and I left the secretary treasurer.
Wow.
First day on the job.
Yeah, so I, that's what happens when you show up. You get delegated.
Oh, I know how that goes.
Yeah. I spent 2 years as the secretary treasurer learning what Farmers Union did, learning from the farmers. Wonderful group of people producing local food in our area. I truly just went to understand how to be closer to my food, how to maybe find a farmer who would grow me a cow. I just wanted a steer, but it's been so much more. And it's been awesome. In 2016, the week after, let me back up, 2014, I guess. 2015, I started my first CSA. I'm going into my 5th season, and so that has really just been a steady source of joy for me. I grow from early June to early October. I put about 8 to 10 vegetable varieties, so it's a smaller CSA than some of the other ones. And then I also put 2 baked goods or homemade goods into the CSA every week. It's been a really great way for me to find my niche. I did find farmers who grow meat for me now. So so I have my cow came from one of our Farmers Union members. Tommy Enright grew my sheep. Chris Holman and Maria Davis helped me learn how to do poultry. So I do my own poultry now. We are a Muslim family, so we grow and butcher halal, which is kind of like kosher, but for Muslim people. And so we do about 100 head of poultry on our farm every year. And I got to learn how to pluck and scoop out the guts and, do all the things that surprised me about myself. And it really brings me a lot of joy, and it brings me that level of control over my food that I was really yearning for.
Can I jump in, Bill?
Please, I'm talking too much.
All I'm gonna adjust for Sarah here. So just I guess a replug of the seasonal AF tour Alicia and I were a part of last year in 2019. Alicia was the November workshop, so 6 months of local seasonal eating, breaking down a CSA box that month from a different farmer, and then also a locally grown meat animal product. And Alicia had her chickens there. We got to break those down. Shabar has some amazing
it's called Shabarbecue.
Shabarbecue sauce that I absolutely loved. But so that's why we're having this a little later in the series, but that's all right. Alicia's super crazy busy, so that's why we're here getting after it. Sarah, sorry.
Oh, no,
what do you have to add? Or what are you asking?
What I wanted to add was my wife Sandy and I, we were members at Woolly Time Micro Farm in 2018. We loved the Lonely Oak CSA, but it was a lot we're just 2 people. So we joined Alicia's CSA in 2018 and absolutely loved it. Her value added products were things like dandelion jelly or a pie or fresh bread. I mean, we got really spoiled.
Yes, the chutney, the bread, everything.
Exactly, and we've got 4 of her chickens in our freezer, and so that was really all I wanted to add was that we joined the Woolly Time Micro Farm in 2018, and we so enjoyed getting to know the Rosvies because they're such a wonderful family. And we took a break in 2019 because I actually had bariatric surgery and I didn't eat too much that summer. But I had many of our farm friends come up and ask me that year, what can we grow for you that you could eat? I was so touched that I was just blown away that this community has embraced, just grateful consumers like Sandy and I. I mean, we are not worker shares. We are not farmers. I don't understand a lot about agriculture, but I trust those people around me who do. And it's definitely paid off in the end. We're back again as CSA members at Alicia's CSA at Woolly Time for the 2020 season, and we couldn't be more excited about that. So anyway, that's just all I wanted to add at the moment.
Boom. I like it.
Boom.
Yeah, just pop in when you need to, when you've got a question to ask. So, Alicia, where were we? Talking chickens. 100 head of chickens. Breaking down the value adds, as Sarah touched on.
Yeah.
I guess we're going even further back now. I jump around a lot. My timeline is very non-linear. Growing up, were you farm family? Did you have access to local food? What did
I was no way a farm family. I grew up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. My parents live on the same place I grew up since I was 3, a little lake cottage on Lake Winnebago. We spent a lot of time on a boat, a lot of time on skis, and really being outdoors and in the dirt is something that puzzles my parents. They're very supportive. They're very happy. They're always at our barbecue every August, and couldn't be more proud of us kids as we've grown up. But it is different. My mom was a Catholic school teacher for 43 years. My dad was a guy at a small manufacturer in Oshkosh, and they're both retired now, and so we have this opportunity to see them. But I am a first-generation farmer. I was always interested in growing food. When I was in my classroom, I was a second-grade teacher in Wausau, and we always grew the pumpkins for the pumpkin patch at the school, which ended up being a fundraiser in October. And I discovered many tips just from having parent volunteers in the classroom. But really, I just had an interest in growing food that sharpened intensely when our health event took place in 2012. And Shabar, my husband, has an uncle. He comes from a family that has a lot more agricultural talent. His uncle was a professor of soils and wastewater management at the university for several years, from 76 to 2016, I believe.
Wow.
And so we have this incredible wealth of knowledge, expert in all things natural resources, agriculture-based, in our family to draw upon. But also, just learning about soil science and cover crops and companion planting has been kind of a nerdy way to geek out about farming. We love that stuff. And there's this time of farming from, for us, October until April, where we are not planting. If we are harvesting, it's just because of sheer luck of what things have lasted. The CSA is over, and farmers market is all value added for my family, so we're not bringing fresh vegetables there. And it's just this quiet time to plan the gardens, plan the rotation, plan the cover crops that we're going to mix into our seed beds that year, expand just a little bit. We're only on 2 acres, so our expansion is always very regimented, and it's very calculated. But this is the dreaming time. This is the time for us to sit with those catalogs and those books and learn. And so yeah, and then we kind of like muster up that energy and start again in March or April, and that's my favorite time of year, because then you're back at the greenhouse and it's maybe 36 outside and maybe 18 inches of snow, but it's like 76 inside, and you're just have this little quiet space, and you smell the plants, and you feel the sun, and it's awesome. It's very renewing. So
I like it. Sarah? Anything? I've got questions, but I'm going to give it to you.
Oh my gosh. Oops.
Sorry.
I got this mic is, there we go. Okay. What do I have to add to that? I would just say that that this is also the dreaming time for us too, because Alicia does a really fantastic job of connecting with her CSA members to ask them what their opinion might be for vegetables that we would like to see in our CSA box the next season. What worked for us, what didn't. Yep. So we would go out there after work, we would go out there, and the pickup time was between, I think, like 4:30 and 6. Mm-hmm. So Sandy and I would load up our lawn chairs, actually, and then drive out to the micro farm, pick up our box, and then we'd sit there till 6 o'clock just sharing about our week and catching up with each other. And, usually Shabar is there, and the kids are running around doing stuff, and there's chickens, and you can see where your food is grown, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a wonderful social time to catch up with Alicia, and I think she draws energy from her CSA members as well, because we are also we try to give as much feedback as possible, so then she can go and interpret that and then grow the things that we would really appreciate in our box, or find a value-added thing. What was it that we tried last year? It was a banana cream pie. Yes. That she made for a pie competition, and she had 2 pies for us to try, and we tried both of them, and clearly the banana cream pie was the winner. But it was just. She said, "Now is this good enough? Do I need something here?" And we're like, "No, don't change anything." So. So she's very open to suggestions and that sort of thing. So we try to give her as much feedback as possible. So, and the Shabarbecue is the bomb. So that we went last year and we had so much fun. I can't wait for it again this year. It is such a celebration of life and food and friends and fellowship. It's really a great event.
Love it. Thanks, Sarah. So I want to. Which would you rather touch on first? So from the idea of the land ethic, are you familiar with Aldo Leopold, any of his writings?
Yes.
So the idea of the land ethic from farmers, I'm always super fascinated on. And from your background, I would love to touch on that idea from a religious standpoint, from a parent leadership role, and then also from the farmers union leadership role. Sure. So kind of whichever one of those you want to tackle first.
Sure. So I'm going to start by thinking about the land ethic, or thinking about the way that we treat our planet, and how I as a farmer have internalized that as a parent, because I think that's my greatest role. That's the most important thing I do. So it's really, I guess I'm going to pop around a little bit. Surprise.
Perfect.
That's how I am. But so in 2016, as a Farmers Union member, I was tapped to consider a run as president of our local chapter. And it really wasn't a thing that was on my radar, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was an interesting opportunity for making a statement. We have our annual meeting in November, and if you recall, in November of 2016, Donald Trump had just been elected president. And so 1 week and 1 day later, we met as a farmers union, and I was elected as our chapter president. And that, in so doing, Farmers Union elected their very first Muslim president of any board of their entire history. And that felt kind of cool.
Yeah.
That felt,
hell yeah.
It made a statement of what Farmers Union, valued.
Mm-hmm.
And it was important to me. And it was important that I tried this, because I have to tell you that it was something I was scared of. I was not really sure that I would be the best advocate for the Farmers Union, but they had belief in me, and being that role, taking on that role in leadership as a parent, actually felt even bigger, because then I was showing my kids how I could be an advocate, or how I could resist something that I felt. I feel like our president has taken our environment in a direction. You might want to cut this. I'm not sure.
Not at all. I'm right there with you.
We're right there with you.
If anyone's got a problem, they can come to me.
Okay. No, I'm very concerned about all of the rollbacks on all of the environmental protections that seem to be happening, and loss of national park land and national lands, and this was something that I could do as an adult to show my children how to resist but be peaceful about it, and show how I very much love to find out how we are all in common, and then figure out how to take those commonalities and learn more about each other. And this was an opportunity for that. The Farmers Union also led me in the following 2 years to attend Washington, D.C.'s National Fly-In. We go as citizen lobbyists and talk to our politicians out in Capitol Hill. So I had an opportunity to speak with Tammy Baldwin and Ron Kind and Ron Johnson, and had an opportunity to Paul Ryan did not take our meeting.
Imagine.
But I was able to talk with them about universal health, affordable health care for all. I was able to draw upon my situation with Shabar's health crisis, just because a stem cell transplant is $525,000. And we paid out of pocket that year $26,000. And if I'm being very frank, we didn't have $26,000 to pay. And so it took some time to settle all of the medical debt. And we have insurance. Mm-hmm. And so to be able, and then furthermore, this is what will always stop us from being full-time farmers. We will never be able to jump off that leap into that abyss of non-insured or buying into insurance. Shabar continues to carry the same insurance he carried before he got sick, and so that is our safety net. And this is one of the things that I was able to talk to politicians about in Washington. It was very empowering. And the following year I went again, and we were able to talk more about how some of the grant programs and conservation programs that are in place through the USDA and the like a high tunnel, putting a high tunnel on your property, putting fencing up for your animals, can really make or break a farmer in any given year when you're doing things on the small scale. So taking that policy and taking that feeling of what I stand for, and look, there's this whole Farmers Union that stands for the exact same thing, and having that solidarity has really been awesome and empowering. And at this point now, with my 3 kids, I get to kind of just sit back and watch how the chips are falling. And I have a 14-year-old who has gone with me to Madison to lobby and has her eye on being engaging in civil discourse with others and I couldn't be more excited about that. It's not a thing that I see most 14s excited about. So that's pretty cool. She hasn't taken that in terms of the land ethics so much, but she and I both, as Muslims, wear the hijab, which is the head covering, and she's taken the role of wearing her headscarf very seriously, and how school systems are slowly starting to adopt policy on wearing uniforms that would do away with the headscarf, and how that is like asking her to not wear a shirt to school, and how it's something that she's really gotten behind, and I am really excited to remind him that, like, we can't talk about religion, politics, and money at school. You know, like that's family talk and stuff. He doesn't really talk about religion so much, but the politics is something that he really wants to push. And he wrote a poem on the atmosphere recently that has gotten a little bit of, he hasn't put it in a contest, and I'm just waiting to see how the teacher responds and how things are. That he's got these awesome teachers, but not every kid comes from a house that wants radical environmental improvement. So so there you go. Yeah, as a Muslim, one of the things that we are meant to do is conserve. Conservancy, and being, actually the word in the Quran is the holy book of the Muslim people, just like a Bible. And one of the words used in the Quran is vice regent of the earth. So I have, and then the, conservation, protecting the earth is mentioned many times. I used to know the number. It's in the hundreds of times in the Quran. And the idea of not even speaking if you can't improve upon the silence. So that's metaphorical. If you were taking that as the earth, not acting upon the earth unless you can improve upon the state that it already is really one of the things that we believe very dearly in our lives and in our practice. And so that comes into play when it is in regards to growing our birds. For example, they get a life outdoors, they get a life of grass and bugs, and when it comes to the butchering process, halal practice does have to do with how the kill is done, but it also has to do with how the animal is treated before death. And so one of the things that we're required to do is offer water to the animal before it is butchered, bring the animals in pairs. That is not a requirement, but that is a suggestion, because it lessens the anxiety of the animal being removed from the area. So there are pieces of being a Muslim that come into my daily life as a farmer, but it's it might be like my personal interpretation and the way that I was living my life anyhow.
I love it. I love all that. So I think you and I became like Facebook friends. Yeah. Just last year, it would have been probably spring, I'm guessing, whenever, I can't remember when seasonal AF was first launched, but right around that time, and When does the fasting happen? Because you were doing like daily fasting
Yes.
blogs.
So yeah, Ramadan is a month long. Right now Ramadan is happening in about May. This year it changes the date every year because Islam operates on a lunar calendar. It is 11 days shorter than like a Gregorian calendar what we're used to using here. So this year, we believe Ramadan will begin on the new moon, April 23rd or 24th, and go through May 24th. So fasting is no water or food all of the hours of daylight. So I can eat and drink as much as I need in the hours of darkness every day for that month. But during the hours of daylight, you are supposed to separate yourself from the food, the water, the swearing, like the.
That was our first conversation Alicia and I had. She's like, I don't have to swear, do I?
No.
I'm like, nope.
Yeah. No, I'm just too immature for it, I think. But get the giggles. But you're even when you do break your fast, you're not meant to have like this whole Thanksgiving spread. You're supposed to be more contemplative. One of the things about Islam is that you pray several times a day. And as I've been a Muslim for 19 years, and as I've learned about my own faith and practiced it, those times of prayer are more moments of meditation than anything else. They're very scripted liturgical prayers. They have the same words and the same movements every single time, so it's almost muscle memory. And or it is, I think, to me, it's muscle memory. And so you have this opportunity to kind of just clear your space a little bit, clear your head space. And that is something that you focus more on in Ramadan. People who might not pray as faithfully 5 times a day do come back to it every year. And so it's just a really good spiritual reset. And I love to write, and so I put kind of a blog, not a blog, I put a...
Ramadan Musings.
Yes, that's what it's called, yeah. I'm at a loss for words, but Ramadan Musings are what I've been doing for the last couple of years, because I find that people are so interested in what it is. They're not exactly sure if they can ask the questions of me, and I will say for your whole listening audience that if you ever find me, you can ask me any question, because I would much rather have the conversation, even if it feels a little thorny or worrisome to you or a little bit awkward, than to have you not know. I'd rather talk.
Raised as a touchy-feely Lutheran, I have really enjoyed our conversations on religion, and it has really enlightened my own faith journey. And actually, I've been attending a UCC church up north in the summertime, because I just feel like that it's been a good fit. I enjoy the pastor there. I enjoy the readings and the teachings. But you and I have had several conversations on religion, and it's true. I could ask you any question. I've never actually had the opportunity to meet a Muslim family and be close to them and be able to even ask any questions. So for me, it has been a real eye-opener, because I know that your religion is peaceful. I know that your religion and your people are peaceful. And being with you and your family has really brought that home to me and to also my wife, Sandy, and I just want to thank you for that.
Awesome.
Bam.
That's great.
We've got everything covered. I grew up in a repressed Catholic household, so
okay.
you just bury it all deep.
So
you don't talk about anything.
Right.
I grew up Catholic, not as repressed maybe, but I carry the guilt.
Yep.
I've got it.
It's there.
Yeah.
Everything.
Just because you change your colors doesn't mean that.
I was the first time, I think, I mentioned that on the phone. I was like, well, she asked about swearing, and I was asking, are there like no-go areas I shouldn't be talking about religion with? and it was a similar thing, and then like the Catholic guilt sets in. Like, why are you talking about other religions? Because that's like, oh, but no. So I'm all about it. I love it. I'm not very religious in the official sense with where I'm at now, but I love talking to people who are religious, passionate, and practicing. It's not just like a check mark on a list.
Would you say, Bill, that, just to get off the subject a little bit, but wouldn't you say how the three of us would probably feel closest to being spiritual by being outdoors, being in nature, growing food, hiking in the woods, standing on the shores of Lake Superior, knowing that there are forces out there greater than ourselves. Would you agree?
Definitely. Definitely.
Because that's the way I feel.
There's where the Lakewood part is. You were talking about the practiced movements of your prayer.
Sure.
Because I hear that and I think of like friends of mine who are yogis, and they do these routines, and it allows you to clear that space. And for myself, that would be archery or firing like a firearm. Like for a lot of people, and I know I tell that to a lot of people who didn't grow up in a hunting household or who didn't grow up around those things, and they're like loud noises, the negative parts of both of those things, and I completely understand that. But for me, it's like I don't even hear the gun. Like it's not something that even phases me. But it's all about the practiced, the movement, I know where certain parts of my body need to line up, where the firearm or the bow needs to line up. So for yourself, where does the movement practice of coming back to farming, religion, family, where does that come from, or what does it mean?
I can totally understand from that archery perspective. We just started practicing archery with my kids, and that idea of always pulling back, always hitting like your nose with the line. I don't know the right words. I'm sorry.
The string.
That totally makes sense. And in prayer, we always begin. There are 4 postures: stand, bow, kneel, and prostrate. And prostration is kind of that tuck and cover position when you're doing a tornado drill as a kid. But the movement of prayer to me really is just, it's a method of going through. You're not sitting for hours on end. You're sitting, you're standing, you're kneeling, you're bowing. It takes about 7 minutes, but you have this same thing every single time, 5 times a day. Or in my family, we pray 2 sets, and so 3 times a day. A couple, and it just clears your head. It just clears that space. And I think that weeding is very much the same. So I love nothing more, and nobody has to feel the same way. I understand. I love nothing more than weeding a row. I feel I start on one end, I'm on my knees, I'm reaching forward, I'm pulling things aside. I've got my my cobra head tool in one hand. You're tearing out, you're making fresh, you're agitating the soil. Like, a lot of those things can be looked at kind of in a greater scheme of making new space for growth. And I think that most major religions have the idea of pruning for growth, and making, and that's just really how I feel that prayer and weeding can both be, even with kids, like that. Maybe it's simplified, but like an evening routine of the kids we turn off the television at 8 o'clock and it's cold and it's quiet, and then they brush their teeth, and then we go read Harry Potter, and then we lay down with them for a little bit, and then we go to bed. And that same thing every single night is expected, and it is a thing that you don't have to think about, and yet it gets the body ready for sleep. And this idea of prayer, you don't have to think about it, you do it, and it gets the body like alleviated of some of the nonsense that's running around in your head all day long. And the same thing with weeding for me. I used to listen to podcasts while I weeded. I am an avid listener of information, but some of the time I have to just stop even that and just be silent, because like you mentioned, you don't even hear the bang of the gun. I don't hear the traffic. I don't hear the I don't even hear the birds, sadly. I just, you are in a zone, and you're just pulling and ripping and moving backward and pulling and ripping and moving back, and then you get up and you're tired and you're sweaty and you're like sore, and it's good sore, and you've got something to show for yourself. And that healed me mentally just as much as the idea of just time passing, and us moving away from cancer in our family. That weeding is awesome.
Oh, I love it. I loved every part of that, and I was laughing inside because I know how much Joel hates weeding. Coming back to the first farm. So with that, we're at an hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I always love to end with concluding thoughts, concluding goals. Where I don't know, what does 2020 local food look like for the two of you, or whatever you want to end with?
Well, I know for myself and my wife, we'll be CSA members at Woolly Time Micro Farm again this year. I've already will commit, and I'll say this on the podcast, I'll commit to being on the planning committee again next year for the 2021 local Farm Shed Local Food Fair. So, and if they'll have me, I'll be the MC again. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that a lot because that's where Bill and I actually introduced myself to Bill, and I said, "Hey, Bill, if you ever, would like a guest host, whatever, call me up. I would love to do it. I think it would be fun." Because I also am an avid listener of podcasts. And I think, gee, that sounds like something I would like to do.
You're great at it.
So, well, thank you. And anyway, and then the other thing I would like to say, I guess, is that, sometimes when you meet someone, they just radiate a positive energy that makes you feel good. Well, that's exactly the way I feel about Alicia. And so I am really looking forward to the 2020 growing season, and, this local food community continuing to grow and being resilient right here in central Wisconsin. We have so many incredible resources, and I'm just so thankful that I found my people here. So, and I really did. I wish I would have found them 20 years ago. But, for the next 20 years until I'm 74, I really look forward to watching all of these kids grow up and supporting as many local farms as possible, and supporting this podcast too, because I think it's important, Bill.
Thanks, Sarah.
So,
thank you. Awesome stuff. Alicia, you got to follow that up.
Oh my gosh, I should have gone first. Concluding thoughts. So every time I have a chance to go down that rabbit hole of life over the last 8 years, it surprises me again. So this morning was another chance to do that. And the resounding bell in my head is just gratitude for every step of that journey. Nobody says that they're grateful for cancer, and because it sucks, but
it does suck.
But the choices that we've made in our life ever since that moment have been pretty incredible, and so that has been really an awesome thing to even just rethink about today, especially it's, kind of the dead of February, and kids are sick and grades are due and everybody's got practices running every single which way. My husband travels for work and he leaves the country tomorrow, Saturday, and we are always just focused on that minutia, that looking back over this is a gift. This is really a great thing to be able to kind of take account of all the wonderful things. And you reminded me, Sarah, of dandelion jelly, and I cannot wait to go and
it's really good.
Get that cooking again. And I was looking at this week as being kind of the close of a season. We did our last farmers market this past weekend. The CSA is pretty much full for next year, so we just have this little moment of sleepiness for us, and to be able to look back with great appreciation for all of the wonderful things that have happened has been a really good way to close up a season. So thank you.
I love it. Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on the podcast. My concluding thought, I realize, is the reason this podcast got delayed from last fall is so Sarah, could find her way out of the show. We wouldn't have had her otherwise. And then that last little, you mentioned the sleepiness before peak crazy season for the farmers. Kind of reminds me of a sleep cycle. Like you get the most powerful REM sleep, the most powerful images or visions or dream state that you get right before you wake up. So it makes sense. It's all connected. So thank you both for coming on the show. And
thanks for having us, Bill.
Thank you.